You're listening to Kizuki, the podcast. I'm Mae Yoshikawa, and I define the Japanese concept of kizuki as the following. Kizuki 1. A moment of epiphany, an aha of realization or insight which opens the knower to a new dimension of truth that was formerly unknown. 2. Steps in an incremental growth of awareness, resulting in a movement from ignorance to greater awareness of the bigger picture. A kind of knowing that cannot be undone, that cannot be unrealized. As a longtime yoga and meditation practitioner, a world traveler, and curious self-explorer, I'm obsessed with kizukis. Listen on each week for inspiring and enlightening stories that may just tip you over for your next aha. On this week's episode, the source of suffering. Have you ever contemplated the source of suffering, or are you just stuck thinking about your suffering and the causes of suffering? If you're anything like me, or maybe curious about personal development, spirituality, or just trying to figure it all out. Maybe you've done some reading about it, like what the Buddhists say about the source of suffering, or what the yogic texts say, or perhaps in your part of the world, some of the religious teachings and doctrines, or maybe just what your grandma taught you. Today, well, it's not like I'm pretending to have any definitive final answer or anything, but maybe there's something here. So, where do I begin? Well, I went to work today and met somebody for the first time, a Japanese lady. And as we were discussing a current work project, she shared a little bit about her recent conversation with her daughter, and it got me thinking. I was thinking about some of the casual conversations that I have with my kids, and also remembering some of the attitudes and the things that my mom said to me. And then I remembered a conversation that I had with my sister maybe a year or so ago, long after we've been grown-ups, about what my sister remembered about what my mom used to whisper in her ear from time to time. And that's this: "You're my number one." Now, imagine if you were 7 years old, 8 years old, or 10 or 11, maybe even 15, and you were part of a family like mine, where, well, I'm the youngest of 4 siblings in my family, so I'm one of 3 sisters, and then there's my brother. And my sister had this remembrance of how when she was a child, there's only 2 parents, right? And then there's 4 of us. And my parents married young. They were 19 and 20 when they married. My mom was 20 when she had my oldest sister. And I was born when my mom turned 30. So within more or less the first 10 years of my parents' marriage, they had 4 kids. So I don't come from a very wealthy family or anything. So there was always food on the table, but there was only a limited amount, right? There's only so many fruits, like so many melons or so many special delicacies like American cherries in season or strawberries. And then when we would have meat dishes like shabu shabu, Japanese divine meat dish, or yakiniku, barbecue or something, there was only a certain amount of meat. And then of course my brother would get to it first, and he was bigger and faster, and I always felt like I didn't have enough, and I actually at some point just gave up competing over the speed of which we could reach for our food. But anyway, that got me thinking about the whole idea of comparison and competition. Because, well, what does that say about how love is portrayed and carried on in our family? Now, my sister and I were having this conversation as grown women, and she was recalling how when mom used to tell her, "You're actually my number one," it used to make her feel good. Like there wasn't enough attention to go around. But today I've got mom's full attention, and it's only the two of us that are hanging out. We don't have to worry about May and the others. But now, for me, as a mom of two young boys, I know I'll never say that to my kids. I'll never say to Isa over Aiden, "You're actually my number one." And I'll never say to Aiden over Isa, "You're actually my number one." Not even if it was some kind of like a childish joke like way. Why? Just simply because it doesn't feel right. But I got to thinking in the car today, what if I said that to one of my children? And the thing is, I actually don't think that comment would make my kids feel good. If I said that to Isa, my older boy, I don't know. I mean, he's 14 now. And I wonder if maybe a tiny piece of him might feel egoically good. But no, actually, all in all, I think he'll feel a little crappy about it, like he's putting Aiden down. And even Aiden at 6 years old, he might have a happy-ish moment, a fleeting moment, but he'll be like, "No, wait, why are you saying that? There's Isa." Why? Because the way that we love in my family, there's no competition. There's not even comparison. We're not in a habit of judging each other that way as better than or less than or worth more or worth less. Why don't we perpetuate this kind of competition, comparison, and judgment? It's because we don't feel separate from one another. We feel like we're one family, one team. And I got to just kind of reflecting in my own head about how much competition there is in the world, whether it's in the office or whether it's over social media or at school or just anywhere. All of the stuff that we worry about. And then why is there competition? Because we can't help but compare ourselves against each other. Am I better than her or less than her? And then we try to strive to at least be better than someone else. Why is that? Because we're in a habit of judging ourselves against one another as better than or less than. Why is that? Because we feel so separate from one another. And in that moment, we are completely forgetting, ignoring, denying our oneness, that we're all just human beings living the human condition. So, a short car ride home, but I got to my own little conclusion about, the cause of suffering all of this competition, this comparison, this judgment springs from the basis of separation. So I'm challenging myself, and perhaps if you want to join me, I'm challenging you. Whenever you feel a sense of suffering and you notice any sense of competition, comparison, and judgment somewhere in the mix there, just ask yourself, where, how, why do I feel so separate from the people that you are comparing yourself, judging yourself against? And see if you can shift that perspective by saying, how am I the same as them? How are we actually, truthfully, on the same team? And bring the separation back to a sense of unity. And I think that begins to hit the nail on the head, so to speak, get to the root of the problem here. So how about that for a kizuki of the week? I always love that I have this chance to talk to you at the end of my day when I have these thoughts in my head, and I would love to hear from you if you have any thoughts. So you can always find me on Instagram or DM me and leave a review wherever you're finding my podcast. I would love to hear what you think. Thank you for listening. Learn more about me in my upcoming book, Kizuki, Realizations Beyond Time and Death, at my website, maey.live, or find me on Instagram at maeyoshiKawa.